Broadcasting from Hollywood, it's the official On Air with Brandon J podcast. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to On Air with Brandon J. I'm Brandon. I'm joined by a special guest today. She is the founder of the Cathartic Realism films, Miss Claire Chubbuck. Claire, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, your story is very compelling because, I've been reading numerous articles, and I guess the way to start off this interview, let's talk about, I think you were at the age of 50, have been able to utilize tragedy with elevation towards kind of your purpose per se. That would be the easiest way to explain this, but let's go back in time and tell us about that defining pivotal moment when you pivoted. You were like, you know what? I'm sad. I can't do this anymore. But then you found the love of filmmaking.
I did. So I was a little, actually at the time, I was more like 25. And so, but the 5 was right. So I was 25, I was working in studios, I was working an office job, and I ended up losing a fiance. And it was tragic. It was upsetting. And it was the first dead body I had ever seen that hadn't been cured, right? And or hadn't been dressed and hadn't been done up in the way that we expect to see death in society, right? The only other time we're really confronted with death in society is in horror films. So we're conditioned to be afraid of people who have passed. So it was my first dead body I saw, and it was someone I loved, and it was unexpected. And so I was clinically diagnosed with PTSD after that. And it was hard to get into an office job, right? I showed up late. I was crying all the time. I had to leave for extended lunches for therapy. And that didn't work, right? Because it's a business. And you know the same, like if you died, they'll replace you the next day. If you are traumatized, they don't want you there anymore.
Right. So you're a liability if you're traumatized, essentially.
Exactly. And we all go through things, even if they're big T traumas, like what I feel I experienced, but there's also little T traumas. People are human, and we don't expect them to be like that as we are working with them in an office capacity. So I had to quit, and I spent a lot of time being just sad and smoking cigarettes and playing Candy Crush, and doing some bullshit, but doing things that were not helpful or conducive to healing. So I then started teaching actors how to act, and because my mother does that. She's a very famous acting coach. She's actually in that picture right there. Hey. I love her. She's my girl. She's my woman.
That's awesome.
Thank you. I have a really great relationship with my mother, and she was broken for me. So she was like, here, teach kids how to act. Here you go. And I was really good at it. I was really, really good at it because my trauma allowed me to connect with people on a level that I wasn't able to before, so that I could be authentically me. I could have real emotions, and that showed them, hey, I can have some real emotions too. So I saw how healing acting was using your traumatic experiences, but the difference, so it's called the Chubbuck technique. And the Chubbuck technique isn't just like how Stanislavski asks you to relive your life, right? The traumatic things in your life. We ask you to put your pain into prosperity. Have conversations with people that you need to have, that you can't have because it will either be destructive or they're dead or whatever. And so I was like, how important would this be to take this into the making of films? And so now I take that process of being able to communicate with people that you can't otherwise, and communicate your own emotions into the writing, the creation, and the post-production of film. So let me just go elaborate a little more what I mean by that. Have you ever had a traumatic experience?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Sorry, not great that it happened.
I think we all have.
We all have. Imagine having to write that story, but having to identify with the person who, let's just use the word abuser for the sake, or the person who was there with you, having to write their storyline as well. You get to walk away with a new understanding of why all of this happened. Even if it's not perfectly accurate, you still at least understand why another human would do that, taking away the fear of humanity. You also get to write your own ending, because it's now your story that you are in the middle of creating. So you can write the ending you want to have. I think that's incredibly powerful.
That is absolutely. I mean, essentially, you're receiving two different perspectives, your own personal perspective and story, but then you have the other individuals you were just saying. So that is unique in terms of, you know, will that story be told happily? Will it have the happily ever ending moment, attached?
Yeah, exactly.
And what's crazy? Okay, so it's not crazy, right? Let's talk about cathartic realism. Okay, so you found that through your trauma, directing and teaching these individuals how to act was refreshing, and you found a love for it. So let's kind of dive deeper into what is cathartic realism, because there's several articles on the web and I'm like, whoa, I'm getting overwhelmed. Like, I got to ask Claire this question. Like, can you define cathartic realism?
It's telling your story for the purposes of catharsis with the empowerment when you get to write your own ending. So that's like the short version of it. But in addition to being able to tell your own story, write your own ending, you get to show us how it felt for you. A lot of people go through the same things. Not everyone feels the same way about it. But with the sound design, with the color temperatures, with the way we light it, with even the genre conventions we use in tandem with cathartic realism, you get to show the world what that felt like for you. So even if we have like 5 stories about, I don't know, one of the ones that's coming up is a story about erectile dysfunction. So let's say we have 5 stories about erectile dysfunction. They're going to be different because men feel differently about it. Or on sort of the darker side, 5 stories about rape. All are going to be different because of the way people experience them. Sometimes it's going to be a cathartic realist comedy. Sometimes it's going to be a horror film that features cathartic realism. But through the tools of cinema, sound design, angle choices, lens choices, we're really exploring how it felt and showing others how it felt, so then we can all not be so alone.
That's very unique. So let's talk about some of the new projects that are very near on the horizon for you.
Okay.
So tell us about some of those projects. Like, what can we expect from cathartic realism films?
So we are in post for a piece about miscarriage that's told from the male perspective.
Wow.
I had a bunch of friends actually during COVID who experienced miscarriage. And this man, his name's Andrew, he went on the internet to see like resources for men, and he found none. And so both of the actors that are in it actually went through miscarriages, and they used making this film to help process that emotion. And what's really beautiful is they got to do it together in this loving environment. So that we're on post on. The next slate of films, one is my story about losing my fiance. I'm going to spoil the ending, to a drug overdose. And that's told in a horror film style that helps me process that loss. Because it was really scary for me. And so I want to use the conventions of horror to show the audience what it was like for me. And meanwhile, understanding why someone I love, who I didn't know was using drugs, and to find him like that, to see him in this was so traumatic for me. I need to have this conversation with him that I'm never going to be able to have. So that's one. And then the erectile dysfunction comedy. Obviously, it's a comedy. It's called Me and My Penis. And that is about a friend who is trying to overcome erectile dysfunction because of the pressures of performing when there's beautiful women in front of him, but it's beyond that because it comes from a place of self-loathing, right? So he doesn't feel worthy.
These sound too entertaining to tune into. So I'm looking forward. Most importantly, Claire, I'm looking forward to seeing you share your story, right? Because it's almost like you're bringing your testimony to the big screen. You're telling it from your perspective, your point of view, right? So others may see it as, okay, it's a tragedy. We all have deaths, but it kind of was something that shaped your world, turned it upside down at that very moment, but it's kind of put you on the path that you're on now, which is very unique. In terms of advice for those out there suffering, because I could say that this is probably a great question for those individuals. So for those out there suffering from PTSD, what advice do you have for them?
Write it down. If you want it to be in film style, that's great. If you want to just do emotive writing, there's been a lot of scientific studies based on emotive writing as a successful way to move past trauma. And in fact, there was one doctor, James Pennybaker, found that it was more traumatic to keep it in than it was to actually process these emotions. So I'd say find your bravery and call me, call me. Like, I'm around, I'm on Instagram. I respond to all the things, So if you hit me up and you have questions, I will answer them. I'm here. I think my number's on the internet, my email's on the internet. Find me. Because
everything is on the internet for all of you out there that want to get in contact with Claire. Okay, yeah. Claire, my last question, and we're going away from the topic, right, of discussion.
Go anywhere.
What are your thoughts towards Web 3.0 and kind of where the future is headed with all of this digital, virtual, augmented reality?
Okay, so here's my view on that. So I have two views. Can I share two?
Sure.
Great. One, that is, I think that there's a lot of money that is being stolen from the people, that we should be making money off our own data, and we should be making money off the things that are available to us in Web3. I also think that with all of expanding Web3 into also AI, right? It's why cathartic realism and telling our stories are more important than ever, because a robot or AI is going to be able to tell the perfect film, the perfect action film. It won't be able to tell us how it feels to be human. That's
You're right. I mean, and a lot of people are thinking that, the immersive experience of an interview per se, let's say that we're in the same room. It's not, you can try to replicate that or duplicate that experience virtually, but it's not the same thing as the emotion of the individuals in the room. I mean, yeah, this is more of a virtual digital thing, but it's still, in my opinion, more immersive than placing an Oculus headset on my head and saying, oh, we're doing an interview. It's not the same experience.
Completely agree. The one thing I do love for an Oculus headset is, have you played Beat Saber? It is an excellent workout. I have not played
Beat Saber. Give us a quick rundown of Beat Saber.
Oh, you hit blocks with your arms to the beat of your favorite song.
Okay, so it's like Guitar Hero, but it's called Beat Saber instead.
Exactly.
100%. Okay, got you. Yeah. Got you. So, I was listening to Mark Zuckerberg speak on the Joe Rogan Experience, and what was interesting is they were talking about the sport of boxing. And when you place that headset on, like boxing, actually, it feels real. But some of the other martial arts that they're trying to integrate, they have not figured out a way to create that real expression. So this is going to be very interesting to see what happens with VR and Web 3.0.
But feeling real, have you been hit in the head? I got in a fight in high school once. I've been hit. My experience on the Oculus did not feel the same as getting punched from a girl at the rival high school.
No, I agree. Point taken. Claire, thank you so much for being a special guest. Congrats on everything. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for taking the opportunity to bring your story to life in the film. to showcase what your trauma, what your experience was, right? Because a lot of people don't get to see it from that perspective, because most directors don't want to really dabble into that area with that kind of mechanism. So thank you so much. Good luck on everything. And we'll talk very soon.
You are fantastic. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank you. Claire Chubbuck right here on Air with Brandon J. Brandon. We'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to On Air with Brandon J. Follow on Instagram at I am Brandon J.